Clinical Educator Training, Skill 3, Observers and Diagnosticians. Clinical Educator Training, Skill 3, Observers and Diagnosticians. It's Skill 3, Clinical Educator Facilitators build capacity and guide the learning for the clinical educator, and bring that being the supervising teacher, to become expert observers and diagnosticians of teaching and learning. Clinical Educator Facilitators work with clinical educators to identify key components in planning for effective observations. Clinical educator facilitators develop the capacity of clinical educators to use evidence-based data collection techniques to observe developing educators. Remember, the developing educators are the interns that you supervise. Clinical educators facilitators develop the capacity of clinical educators to analyze data collected during observations to prepare for feedback conversations with the developing educator. It is said that the best teachers are those who show you where to look, but don't tell you what to see. So, evidence-based, non-evaluative observations. There are two types of evidence that we share: noticings and wonders. Noticings are specific evidence-based, non-evaluative data related to teaching and learning gathered during an observation. Wonderings are based on what I saw and heard I am curious about. So there are some rules for wonderings. Is there anything about the educator's thinking or decision making that you want to know more about? If you know the answer to the question, it is not an authentic wondering. Always assume positive intent on the part of the educator. The wondering should generate conversations. Every wondering needs an associated noticing, but every noticing does not need a wondering. How do you know if it's not a wondering? First, if it's a yes-no question, or a why question, or a suggestion, or a judgment statement, a short answer question. Here are some stems of wonderings you might ask an educator. How do you or did you make decisions about blank? What is your vision for blank? How do you typically, how was it that like or not like what you did today? What did you learn from about your students today when they talk me through? As we share information with our interns, we must remember to raise our words, not your voice. It is rain that grows flowers, not thunder. Another way, Desmond Tutu said, "My father always used to say, don't raise your voice, improve your argument." And Steve Marbali, the volume of your voice does not increase the validity of the argument. We must learn to use evidence as a means to reason the conversation we are having, because often feedback can feel judgmental. So, reflection time. When you observe, what do you tend to look for and listen for, and why? Think about what bias might you bring to the classroom observation. Why do you have these biases? You could think maybe instead of biases, just preferences. What information did you share that will help improve the teacher's professional practice and student outcomes? That's critical. What did you notice and choose not to share, and why? What strategies will you implement to reduce giving bias and judgment based feedback? Some foundational skills for effective observations. 1. Preparing for observation, choosing the focus, and using a rubric as a guide. We have our best practices from the ASCA. We also have the Danielson frameworks to base it off of. Non-judgmental noticings and wonderings. Ask authentic questions to better understand a teacher's decision making related to specific evidences. As you talk to your counselor intern, discuss the noticing wonderings to help understand their decision making process. Cite specific evidence for focused observations. Remember, before you go in and observe, you have agreed on what your look-fors are and what the purpose of that lesson. So the feedback needs to be tailored towards that. Avoid using vague, measurable descriptors, such as a lot. You could say 5 out of 7 students. A long time, about 34 minutes. Most, 3 activities out of 4. Some, 4 out of 7 students. A few, 2 students responded. See the difference in the type of descriptors that are used? On the left side, they're vague. On the right, you're more specific. That can give you better conversation. That can give better focus on what the next steps are. Mentoring feedback is less about what is right and wrong and more about what is next. Think about that. In what way is your feedback helping your intern to know what is next so that whether they did a good job or a poor job, they can improve the next time? Let's practice. We're going to watch a school counselor in action using a Google form and write some noticings and wonderings or questions you would ask to better understand the teacher's decision, and decide on some non-judgmental piece of evidence to use for discussion. And you'll share that inside of the Google form that has been provided. Back to a we'll call this a practice intern. So there's a video embedded here. It's about 10 minutes long for you to watch a particular counselor giving an individual session to a student. And you will listen to the conversation that takes place, and then you will type below there, right here, your response, your feedback to the intern counselor here. Do not provide feedback that tells me what you would tell the intern. Actually type your feedback as if you were typing it to the intern themselves. We're not going to be as concerned about completing this before your intern finishes their time with you. We are modifying this right now to accommodate for the COVID-19 situation and the fact that we were building a specific course for school counselors, and so I had to modify the course and needed time to help develop that as well. I do appreciate you taking the time to work through this, and I hope that the course that we developed specifically for school counselors was useful to you and relevant, and we'll give you an opportunity to provide feedback for that. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, and otherwise I wish you a good year and a strong finish.